Well, hey, how are you? All right, so page 23. So we're getting into the null and the alternative hypotheses. And this is how you have to kind of think about just statistics in general. Okay, now I realize you probably won't choose to do statistics for a career, but if you do, or if you have to ever do research, if you choose to get a master's or a PhD or anything like that, they will present an idea to you saying, hey, think about what you would like to focus on, and you could do any number of things that you have recognized in life that you want to experience. And usually before you would start any type of research, as far as a graduate level type of thing, you would meet with an advisor and say, hey, this is what I think I would like to research. And it could be anything from, you know, social media has improved my educational experience. And then they're going to ask you, well, how are you going to prove this? How would you go about doing this or disproving it or anything like that? Or you could say students that eat fast food every day tend to have lower grade point averages in high school. And so there's just different things that you could start noticing about what things that you've come across in life. Hey there, I moved the test to Monday. Sorry, I didn't think there would be too much argument. So when I was getting my master's degree, it was in educational leadership. So I do have my principal's license and I have my superintendent's license. I could apply to be any of those, but I choose not to. They said, well, Chris, what do you want to say? And I said, I wanted to show that block scheduling showed higher test results than traditional scheduling. And I was never able to go through and do my research because my thesis only had to be 3 chapters, and a dissertation for a PhD has to be 5 chapters, which the 5 chapters are you're doing the research, you're collecting the data, you're evaluating your data, you're testing your data to say if there is a chance that there was evidence for or against it. But that was what I had prompted. Now, all the things that I came across in doing my research, one of the chapters is something called a review of literature, which you got and you look for, is there anything written about and any studies done on what you're thinking, to show support through what they found. And then you don't have to come up with an idea that no one's ever thought of, because there's a lot of people in the world that have thought of a lot of ideas. So it's very possible that you have thought of an idea that they might have also done. So then it kind of rounds back to yesterday where we were talking about the movie theater and how we had 100 things on a confidence interval. So it meant if you had 95, or if you had 100 statisticians that did a similar type of test, that the confidence interval would fall within that certain margin of error to find the parameter or the mean. And it's okay that you are doing studies similar to what other people have done. Of course, you can't duplicate what their study was because that's called plagiarism, but you could start finding that you might have found evidence that does or does not support what other people have done. And that's just statistics in general. And then what they do is with thesis and dissertations, there was some site that, this is before all the major social medias are out there and even before Google was out there, that all of this stuff falls into an electronic library that I could have used as my resources as well for other people who are doing statistics. And some people might ask, well, statistics hasn't always been out there as a study item. It's been more observations. So it had to start someplace. But we are far enough into just civilization that we do have studies that are done based on people. And studies can change as society changes. And that's not bad. It doesn't mean the person who originally did the study in the beginning was incorrect. It's just of the time, what did it show? So there's something called a hypothesis test, and it's a test to determine if there is evidence in a sample of data to infer that a certain condition is true for the entire population. The hypothesis test examines two opposing hypotheses about the population. You have something called the null hypothesis. And you have the null and the alternative. And they're both related to each other. They say the same thing. It's just one of them contradicts the other. And you're trying to test one to show if there's evidence that points towards it or not. It says the null hypothesis is a type of hypothesis used in statistics that proposes that no statistical evidence exists in the set of given observations. Okay, so again, if you're collecting a sample of data, and we've talked about the numbers in a sample, if they're greater than 30, then we use a normal distribution. If they're less than 30, then we use a t-distribution. So these are all things that take place. The one thing that we have to really realize that's taking place is it has to be a random sample that you're doing. It can't be just we're standing outside the doors out here and collecting data from people passing by. That's collecting data. That's not something that you could say there's a conclusion based on it. So the alternative hypothesis is based on the idea, yes, there is significant relationship to be discovered here. The difference and effect or change in the relationship defined, or perhaps that we have discovered something different than the expected status quo. So another way to think about this, the null hypothesis, denoted by H naught or H sub 0, okay, is usually a hypothesis that sample observations result purely from chance. The alternative could be either H1, or they use H lowercase a. Either one of those could be used in statistics. Is the hypothesis that the sample observations are influenced by some non-random cause. Okay, so you look at example 1, bottom page 23. We wish to study to see if a new medication for lowering cholesterol actually works. Okay, so there's all kinds. Anytime there's a new drug put out on the market, they have to basically go through and see if there's data that satisfies it. Then they hire an advertising company that has to put all the disclaimers of the ill effects that if you take this, these could be side effects, including eyeballs falling out of your head and dry mouth and frequent vomiting. These are the side effects of this, and you're like, I don't know if I want to take that. But so the null hypothesis in this case about this medication that they're designing that's supposed to lower cholesterol, the null is the new medication has no effect on cholesterol. The alternative hypothesis, HA or H1, the new medication lowers cholesterol. Okay, so the one's basically saying, if you had this random study, and a lot of times if you're doing a study that is a random sample, they do it sometimes as a single blind and sometimes as a double blind. A single blind is the person wouldn't know that they're actually getting the drug. The double blind would mean that the person who is administering the drug doesn't know if they got a sugar pill versus the actual drug, and then the patient also wouldn't know, and then they're able to collect data based on that. Okay, on top page 24 says, we wish to do a study to see if yoga reduces stress levels. So your null hypothesis, yoga has no effect on stress levels, and the alternative hypothesis is yoga reduces stress levels. So I'm not quite sure how you actually would measure stress levels other than using one of those scales, that the Likert scales that we had talked about a long time ago. Remember, it was the frowny phase to the not so frowny phase to a neutral phase to kind of a smile to a big smile. I mean, you could collect data that way to see if that works, but you just don't know at this point. Okay. Example 3 says, is there a gender difference in ability to learn a foreign language? So the null hypothesis, there is no gender difference in the ability to learn a foreign language. And the alternative hypothesis, there is a gender difference in the ability to learn a foreign language. Now, that kind of study actually comes, there's an awful lot of studies that have taken place with that. And fortunately, you all are in a really good place as far as education goes, but they used to steer or direct students to go one pathway or another from middle school on. And I always thought it was kind of silly, because I definitely knew females that I had gone to school with who were very intelligent, but they would steer them away from taking science courses that I was taking so they could be in like a home economics type of situation. I kid you not, this is like 80s, growing up in the 80s. I mean, the beautiful thing is this has changed dramatically. And, the thing is, there shouldn't be a pathway for anybody to say, hey, because you're this gender, this is what you should be. It should be, hey, we celebrate the gender you are and what you want to do. And so, I take pride in the fact that both of my daughters who are in college are pursuing science degrees. I think that's fantastic, and I love it. But I remember when I was in the College of Engineering, it was all guys. And that was at Arizona State. And there was plenty of females at Arizona State, but it was all guys. And I was just like, and the joke was, oh yeah, if you want girls in your class, get your Bachelor of Arts, get your BA, not your Bachelor of Science, your BS. And I of course called BS on the whole thing, because not Bachelor of Science, but the other BS. But it's just how society was. Was it wrong? In my opinion, yeah. Society evolves into what it should be, and it's continuing to evolve, which is wonderful. Hopefully society gets it right at some point. But all right, so example 4, it says the unemployment rate lowering in recent years. So our null hypothesis, there has been no significant change to unemployment rate in recent years. The alternative hypothesis is the unemployment rate has been lowering in recent years. Okay? Now, hard thing on the unemployment rate, we have the media that's in the way of us knowing the actual truth. Okay? Unfortunately, the media has gotten kind of convoluted, and they don't always present all sides. Even if they say, we present the whole story, that's not always true. And so unfortunately, we get swayed as society by media. You guys get swayed by your social media. And I know there's certainly things that you all have seen on your social media that might have you going, what? And but it's just kind of how you run through things. So the unemployment rate, what I'm talking about is, there are media sources that will say that we have an unbelievably low unemployment rate, and then there's other media sources on the next channel that'll say our unemployment rate is out of control. Who's really telling the truth? I don't think you're getting the whole picture between either of the sources. I have no idea if the unemployment rate is higher, lower, and indifferent. I just know that anytime I go to any, store, you see help wanted signs. Does that mean the unemployment rate is low because there's so many help wanted signs, or does it mean that the unemployment rate is high and that the stores really need that many people? I don't know. Okay, and I'm not going to go and ask the guy at King Supers, his philosophy of what the unemployment rate is. Going, hey, I'm getting paid to be here. So, okay. Example 5, page lower 2/3 of page 24 says the average IQ overall is 100, but people who work on crossword puzzles regularly have a higher average IQ. So the null hypothesis says the IQ of crossword puzzle solvers is 100. The alternative, the average IQ of crossword puzzle solvers is greater than 100. Okay, are you starting to see how you have the two hypotheses that are talking about the same situation, but one is kind of saying this is taking place and this is not taking place? And then example 6, the unemployment rate is below 4%. The null hypothesis, the unemployment rate is not below 4%. The alternate hypothesis says the unemployment rate is below 4%. So these are all things that you could test the data, you could collect data on, and you could start testing it. And as we progress through this chapter, we're going to see more and more ideas of, first off, do we have a sample of 30 or bigger? Do we have a sample of 30 or smaller? Here is certain tests that we're going to use in order to validate one thing or another, or find evidence that one thing or another does take place. I think you all might agree with me with this. Is everything that you see on social media the 100% truth? Yes, it is. Okay, we got someone who we might need to educate a little bit further. But yeah, I mean, I know that my generation and the generation that was before me, so my parents' generation, their gospel truth is what they found out was what their family's beliefs were. And it saddens me that when I come across people who are my age, and I got a lot of friends that are this way that are not in education, they will sit there and promote that this is the gospel truth of this and this and this and this. And then I have friends that will sit there and they'll give me grief because I've got a college education, and they will say, you're not any smarter than I am, Stirrup. Just because you have a college degree means nothing. Okay, I mean, I'm not saying you have to have a college degree to be successful in the world and in life, but a college degree is something. But if you found something that you do that you're happy with, I can assure you, the friends that I have in Arizona who are not college educated, all they do when I go see them is they just gripe about how crappy their jobs are. And they're like, yeah, you're a teacher though, man. That must suck. Like, no, it's awesome. I get to deal with new things every day. And I love it. I love the change. And I love that the students that I have, I'm learning from my students more than I'm actually teaching them, which doesn't make sense to my friends, and it might not make sense to you, but I learn more about just being a human being from you guys than I actually teach you guys in content and in statistics, which is cool. So I'm pretty grateful for what I do, and I love what I do. So, and I'm always looking to see if I can improve what I do. So, I got some crazy ideas on the horizon of a PhD program that I'm looking at. And what it's really leaning to do is improve education for all, not just Cherry Creek High School. So those are just a few things that I've been playing around with. So this will be due on Tuesday because we'll do the chapter 5 test on Monday. So this will be due on Tuesday. It'll be page 91 and 92. And then on Monday, Monday will be the test for chapter 5. Does that make sense? And I hope I didn't shock anybody by moving the test to Monday, but I appreciate you. The few that were here originally when I first brought it up, I didn't have anybody say, nope, 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 nope. So that's kind of cool. Questions for me? We good in the hood? All right.